Welcome to Film Talk Weekly Radio. This is your guest host, Castle Searcy, with the Santa Fe International Film Festival coming up on October 14th through 19th. And FYI, our submissions close on July 7th. That's our final deadline. So today, I'm really excited to be here with Mary Jenifer Mitchell, actress, lifelong creative. I'm going to let her tell her story and everything she's working on. Welcome, Mary Jenifer.
Hi there, Castle. Fun to be here.
Yeah. So, have you always been an actress?
I think so. I'm the middle of three daughters with a father who was a big prankster and loved doing practical jokes on people. And I think to find my place in the family, I was like the comedian.
Uh-huh.
And I also had this wild imagination, even as a child, where I would have dreams and take a whole day to tell every detail of it to my family. And I did comedy routines when we'd go to visit relatives. I would make everybody sit in chairs on the lawn and I'd come out and do stand-up comedy.
Really? At what
When I was
age?
a little kid. I
Oh,
did
wow.
I did one about a shoe salesman having to deal with women who were real picky and trying to get into shoes that were too small for them, and I thought it was hysterical. So,
That's like legit funny though, even today.
because I watched a lot of Red Skelton and I loved his humor when I was young. I also fell in love with a lot of silent movie stars because I was a night owl all my life, and I would get up and turn. Once we had TV at night. When I was real little, you just had TV for a few hours during the day, and there was nothing in the at night. And then
Like they
once
didn't program TV at night?
they didn't have programs, they had just a few shows like the Bob Cummings Show or Liberace or Queen for a Day or things that were during the day. Oral Roberts was big because I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and so there were things like that you watched and cartoons, a few cartoons. And then gradually it got out to where there would be just a couple of shows in the evening. And then by the time I was in junior high, I guess, we had TV at night. And I would get up in the night and turn on the black and white TV and watch things with the sound turned off. And so even the talkies were silent movies to me, and I fell in love with Theda Bara and and later with Veronica Lake
Okay.
and a bunch of like old time movie stars and Jean Harlow and Mae West were my idols because the only really fun parts that women had were the whores in the movies. Call girls, and they had a lot of fun. And so I knew that was what I wanted to do. I remember dressing up one time in one of my mom's old dresses and hats for Halloween with a cigarette in a holder and telling my dad, who was doing some work in the yard, I said, "Take my picture, Dad. I'm going as a whore." And I didn't know what that meant. And my poor father, who was very conservative, went ahead and took a picture of me and
So
just
to be
figured,
clear for the audience, you wanted to be an actress, not a whore. Right. Yes.
yes. So then in grade school, I was going to have my debut in a kindergarten role as a rabbit, and I broke out in measles that night
No
as my mom was putting
way.
my costume on, and I didn't get to go be in the thing. And then later in fifth grade, I went to this really tiny Episcopal school run by nuns. It was at a cloister, and there were 80 kids in the whole school. So I went to a different school every year, and that's a whole other story. But that year, I was
Okay.
at this little school, and with 80 kids in the whole, like kindergarten through sixth grade, in my fifth grade class, there were 12 students, and of there were people celebrating their 17th and 18th birthdays in fifth grade because it was a lot of mental retardation, a lot of very special needs kids, and I was kind of the only normal kid in my class. So my teacher kind of let me do what I wanted to do, and I would leave class a lot of times and go hang out in the sixth grade class with Mrs. Middleton, who spoke French and taught me French. And then we decided to do Little Red Riding Hood in French in the apple orchard of the nuns. So we were out in the woods, and I got to be Little Red Riding Hood in French as my debut. And then it was like, it was all over then. I,
Yeah,
I knew what I wanted to do.
that was it. And uh Were your parents supportive?
Yeah, they were to a point. Um, they always like encouraged us to do whatever we wanted. But when I moved to New York, I went to New York for a week after graduating high school. I finagled a week with promises that didn't come through to my parents because they were sending me to Maryland to visit my dad's family, which was this very old family in Maryland. My dad's descended from Betty Washington, George's sister. So
Wow.
she's a so I guess I'm a direct descendant too. I always talk about him being,
So
but I
you're like
didn't
a
know.
real daughter of the revolution.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and my mother was in the DAR.
Oh,
I did not
really?
feel the need to join. I went to some of the meetings with her. They were very interesting.
Yeah.
But she was a realtor, and so it was great connections for her. She was in a whole bunch of things and they did a lot of like charity work and scholarships and stuff. So that, I mean, they did good deeds
Yeah. Yeah.
over a fancy tea at the Denver Country Club.
Right.
You know? Um, But anyway, when I decided, I went back to after I did a year at CU trying to be a drama major in a school. They didn't have a drama department at that time. You
Oh,
couldn't
oh,
do
really?
a major. I had
Okay.
to be a speech major. And I got very few classes that I liked, and I kind of hated school and went away to do summer stock in New Hampshire for the summer. And on my way back, stopped in New York for a weekend and stayed 10 years.
Amazing. To tell everybody what summer stock is.
Summer stock is it's a bunch of old actors or there's a circuit of actors, like people from the bigger cities who need a job for the summer. And it's usually husbands and wives for the leads. And so the first apartment I had in New York was I rented from a gay couple, but it was a man and a woman who were both gay, but for visual reasons were pretended they were married,
Mm-hmm.
but they had their and so they got jobs in summer stock as a husband and wife, but then did whatever they wanted. And so there were a couple of couples who were in that group, and then a wonderful young ingenue named Marjorie Bloomfield from Altoona, Pennsylvania, who became my dear friend that summer. And I learned all about stuff, but I was getting $10 a week to work on every show, to build sets, to paint sets, to I was in charge of making all the costumes because I foolishly, when I signed the information thing, they said, "Can you run a sewing machine?" Sure, I can run a sewing machine. I'd had seventh grade sewing, and my
Yeah.
mom was an incredible seamstress. I'd watched
Amazing.
her for years, so I said yes. And when I got there, they said, "Oh, you'll be making all of the costumes and props."
Oh my God. And you
So
did it.
I worked on sets all day. I was
Uh-huh.
in every show in the chorus of it and understudying, and I would be up entire nights crying at the sewing machine as
Oh
I
my
did
God.
the very first show I had to do clerical shirts with the turnaround collar and hand puppets. It was like I because it was Carnival the show. So
Uh-huh.
it was like that, and then I had complaints from actors that the puppet wasn't comfortable enough on their hand. I was like, you know, it was bizarre, and I eventually became kind of Cinderella there because the guy who was in charge of all of the sets and costumes was this wonderful screaming queen who was just so much fun. But then his assistant was this girl who was this real witch, and she possessed him and didn't like that he was friends with another woman. And so she used to come up with punishments for me. Like I had to clean, it was a Chinese restaurant, and they had all of these Chinese men working there who were sending checks home to their wives and families in China. They couldn't bring them over. They lived in a dormitory situation, and I had to clean their bathrooms, which just had green slime over everything you can imagine. And I was given a toothbrush to clean it with, the floor and the toilets, by this woman. And one of the
Where is she?
actors,
Where is she right now?
I don't know, but one of the actors kidnapped me and took me away to the beach for a day one day.
So who goes to like
Oh,
summer?
the local people, like I've when I first moved up here to 4 Mile, there was a guy who lived at the top of our mountain and named Adam, and his father came for a visit, and he was from New Hampshire. And I said, "Oh, I did summer stock and hooks at New Hampshire." And he's at the China Dragon Playhouse, and he knew the playhouse and told me it had just burned down the year before. So it had been there until the last 8 or 10 years. And they had a Chinese restaurant, and they advertised it on their menu. The menu said, the best Chinese restaurant on the Eastern Seaboard. And so when I moved to New York after that, I was amazed that people didn't know about that restaurant, because I go, well, it's the best Chinese restaurant on the Eastern Seaboard. Well, they put that in print. It has to be true, right? People just look at me. I was so naive and thought I was very worldly when I moved to New York.
Uh-huh.
And I look back on situations like one of the first weeks after I actually made the move, I was staying at my parents decided I could go if I lived at the Martha Washington Hotel. When I'd gone before, I'd stayed at the Barbizon for a week in 66 after graduating high school. And I somewhere have the receipt for that week. It was $37.50 for a week at the Barbizon.
The
I was on the,
Barbizon is a hotel?
yes, it's a
Okay.
very fancy at
Okay.
60th and Lexington. It's Upper East Side.
Okay.
A lot of actresses, retired actresses, had the mezzanine floor in that hotel then, and had suites there and lived there like old actresses. That it was fun. And then I was on the tippy top floor that was all students, and so you shared a bathroom down the hall, and you had a little cubby with a narrow little bed and a sink in it, and some hooks to hang clothes on. And that's where I'd stayed the first time I went to New York. Then the next time, my parents put me in the Martha Washington, which was also for women only, and that was how I they thought they agreed for me to go to New York if I'd stay there. But I got
Because it was less
on a
expensive?
Fifth Avenue bus, like my second day in New York, thinking I have to find a job. I know how to ski. There must be ski shops in New York. And so I get on the Fifth Avenue bus, and I'm in this little outfit that's like shorts, but it's a dress that's shorts, not with no pleat. It's just like loose Bermuda shorts. And it was all one piece, had a little Peter Pan collar, was brown with like little tiny flower print all over it, and
I
little
can see it. Yeah.
and, and sandals. And I get on with my little purse and ask the bus driver to say, can you just drop me at the nearest ski shop? I'm looking for a job, and I'm thinking they must have a ski shop on Fifth Avenue. And so the bus driver just kind of rolls his eyes. And as I walk back to get it, he says, sure, I'll let you know. And as I'm walking back, these two New York girls are sitting in, and they stop me and they go, well, have a seat here. We got to talk to you. And they couldn't believe I was for real. And so they just had to talk to me and find out what I was doing. And they said, can you sew? And I'd gotten in trouble with that before, but
Yeah.
they said, we've got a business making leather purses and hats out of rabbit fur. And then they dye them. And
Uh-huh.
they needed someone to do piecework and sew it. And so they showed me how to do that. And I started doing that. And I would just get piecework money from them. And then they said if I needed a place to live, Marie lived in a basement apartment on Barrow Street, right across the street from where my sister Eileen was filmed on Barrow in New York, off Bleecker, and just 2 doors down from the 86 Club, which was a famous place in the 20s, and it was still a bar when I was there. And so there were some girls upstairs who had like a 7 bedroom apartment, and I think it was like $129 for the whole thing back then. But they needed more girls to move in to share the expense. So I moved in there for a while, and then had a sublet from this gay couple, and then got my own apartment on Perry Street, where I lived for 3 years, and then a loft on Canal and Green for 3 years, and then a loft on Bond Street between Bowery and Lafayette for three
Oh,
years.
wow.
And the first ones, I had 3 apartments that were fifth floor walk ups,
Oh, wow. Uh-huh.
including my first loft. So I stayed in shape.
Yeah. Or you just don't leave, I guess.
Well, and it's like, it doesn't matter that you're on the fifth floor. that you've forgotten. I mean, that you still forget things. I'd get all the way downstairs and be going out the door and go, oh, damn. And I'd have to run back up five
Yeah.
flights of
Oh
stairs,
my God.
get whatever
Yeah.
it was and come back.
Yeah.
So I stayed in shape.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, which is good for your acting career, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And
I
so,
lucked out the first year I was in New York. Marjorie Bloomfield was the one person I knew when I moved there. And she gave me all kinds of tips, and auditions used to come out in the Village Voice on Wednesdays. And that's where you'd look for an audition. And so she was always tipping me off. And the first fall I was there, she said, "Oh, there's an audition for this director out of Cafe La Mama named Tom Ian, and we should go because they're doing a musical and they want Nordic types who can sing." And so we decided, okay, we we fit the bill. And so we went and we auditioned, and one of the girls in the cast, Ellen Gurin, who I ended up becoming friends with because did get in, was like, she was so funny. And it was all these like fairly I mean, I thought I was jaded at 19, but she was like even more jaded because she was from New York, you know? And so she was saying, yeah, Tom looked around the cast the other night and said, we're doing a musical and we don't have anybody blonde or who can sing.
hmm,
So we thought we'd hire a couple. So that was how we got the job. And on the way leaving there, I got mugged.
no.
Yeah, on the Bowery, um, between Third and Fourth on the Bowery, and we're walking along, and some kids come up and grab both of my arms, and I had a purse and a script.
Uh-huh.
And what they didn't know is the purse had a strap around my arm.
Right.
And so they came along and they're going,
Hmm.
hey, mommy, come on, give us some money, give us some money. And I'm like, I had $5 to my name and I was holding on to it. I was not going to
Right.
give that away.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, no, 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 go on. It was like little kids, I thought, they were these little short people. And then one of them grabbed the purse, which spun me around, and the other threw I thought a snowball at me. And in my mind, I'm kind of laughing, oh, he's throwing snow. Ugh! And it was ice. And it
Oh.
like hit me in the face and gashed me open. So I was bleeding, but I had on dark gloves and a dark coat. I had on my mother's old squirrel dyed to look like mink coat from the 40s that she'd given me because it was so cold in New York. I had her send it. And so I looked like maybe I had money. I don't know. So then I'm standing there and she's going, move your hand. Can you see? Can you see? Because I didn't realize I was bleeding. I was just like this. And I was thinking,
Hmm.
oh no, thinking of all the dental work my parents had paid for for years of braces. And I hit my mouth. I figured a tooth was broken, and I was like, oh no. And was supposed to have my first modeling job the next day, a print job.
Oh my
And my
God.
face is gashed, and we ended up going to first we were trying to get cabs to stop, and they wouldn't stop because there was blood. They'd slow down and see there was blood and take off. And
Right.
so some guy in a little sports car with just two seats in it drives up, and we get in, told us get in, and as we're getting in, he says, I just had to stop and see why cabs weren't stopping for two pretty girls. And then he went, oh, he saw my face. And then he just laid on his horn and stepped on the gas and ran all these red lights, taking me to the closest
Wow.
hospital. Well, the closest hospital was um, oh God, what's the name of it? The one with the big loony bin that's always talked about
Oh, uh,
in those days in the
yeah,
60s.
it's like they talk about it
I'm
on
blanking.
TV
I'm
sometimes.
blanking. Anyway,
Yeah.
we went there and no one was helping me. And so then finally they took me out of the and it was just total chaos. People roaming around, stoned out of their gourds, lying on the floor, screaming, crying, people injured, all this stuff. And then they took me out of sight because I was bleeding and put me in a room. And then I just sat in that room and sat in that room. And a cleaning lady came in and then she came back. She says, nobody's come to see you. Here, let me see what I can find. She found some gauze and stuff and put it on my face. So then I started walking out to the payphone on the outside. And I only knew a couple people in New York, but I called the daughter of a friend of my father's, Susan Watson, who was an actress, and I had done some babysitting for her. And she had been my babysitter when I was little. And so
Oh,
she was away, but she had a nanny staying with her kid who said, "Oh no, to go to Payne Whitney. Go to Payne Whitney Hospital." So the guy took me there, and it was like night and day. I walk in, and immediately three people are taking care of me. They immediately stitch me up, tell me that can give me an appointment with a plastic surgeon the next day, who said no, the guy did such a good job. And but I couldn't do my first modeling job. And
oh.
every time, and I had this huge black eye with this cut there. And when I'd get on the subways or on buses, there was a type of older man, usually with a goatee and an ascot and very well dressed, who would just eye me up and down. And I know he was real interested in someone who had been beaten up.
The same man or a type of
No,
man?
there would be a type of man,
There's a
or
type of man who's into that.
yeah, or
Yeah.
there would be women who would just shake their head like he beats her and she stays with him.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I was making up stories for all
Yes,
these
of
people.
course. Yeah. You have a million great stories. Was the hospital Bellevue?
Bellevue, yes,
Yes.
that's where I
Okay.
went
Yeah.
first.
I
And it was like a loony bin in there. It was just insanity.
yeah. Okay, we're going to take a quick break for these
Okay.
messages. We'll be right back. This is Castle with Santa Fe International Film Festival here with Mary Jenifer Mitchell, lifelong actress, singer, model, or almost model. Um, we're going to hear more about it when we come back from these messages. And we're back with Mary Jenifer Mitchell. You're in Colorado right now,
Yes,
yes? Okay,
yes.
I am
Up in the
too.
up in the mountains just west of Boulder.
I heard you live on top of a hill, a really
I live
steep
at the bottom of our hill, but it's on the edge of a canyon. So there's a drop down and then hills across from us.
in a
I mean,
log
form of a
cabin.
canyon. Well, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
People call it a cabin. I call it a house, but I guess as far as most of the houses up here go, it's a cabin.
Uh-huh. And we were talking about you were on your way to a modeling um job and you got sidetracked, we'll say. And
Yeah.
so did you keep modeling? Like you
Well,
seem like the person who doesn't give up. So I'm guessing.
I had modeled before going to New York. In high school, my mother had entered me in the Wendy Ward from Montgomery Ward's, the Wendy Ward Charm School, taught by Dorothy McGeehan, who had been a runner up in the Mrs. America pageant, who was delightful. She was inspirational and lovely. And my mother had entered me in that because I never went on dates in high school, and this started at the beginning of high school, but I hadn't really been on a date, but I hung out with guys, like a whole pack of guys. I'd
And
go
she
to
wanted you to go on
school.
dates?
She wanted me to pick one boy instead
Yeah.
of going out with a gang of boys. And so she thought I needed to learn to be more of a lady. And so I went to charm school, and then
Oh,
I got to model for Montgomery Wards. And so
cool.
that was where all my clothes when I moved to New York were my modeling clothes that I got to buy at discount.
Cool.
But I actually did get to do some cool things with the modeling because the first big all covered mall in Denver was built in the 60s, in the mid 60s, while I was in high school. It was called Via Italia.
That
And
was
so
my high school mall.
oh yeah.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
so we would go there and model, and I got to model mink coats. And the thing was, with a fur that you were taught, you always have to have disdain for it, and you take it off and drag it on the floor and do
Oh,
all this stuff.
really?
And real haughty. And so we would go through the cafeteria to unsuspecting families. Some guy is there with his family at Christmas time, and I go through and I get his wife to touch the fur, and then don't you want to buy this for your wife?
So these were real mink furs, not squirrel.
Yes, they were
Yeah.
real mink furs.
Yeah.
Yeah, in that day they were real mink furs, and I got to be on a stage of modeling with when Miss Thailand, who had won the Miss Universe pageant that year, came to Colorado, and I had to stand next to her. And I'm not big, but I always thought of myself as big, but she was tiny. and beautiful and just like this porcelain creature that was so gorgeous. And I had to stand next to her, and I felt so gawky and awkward, next to this beautiful little thing. But that was my modeling career. But all those clothes went to New York with me,
And you,
including a straw hat I still have that had patent leather trim on it and a patent leather purse to go with it, and gloves and dusters and dresses. And when I first went to New York, I would go to a bar and guys would just swarm around me and want to touch my face. And they go, "You're not wearing any makeup." Oh my God. Because I wore it for me. I was wearing mascara and some eyeshadow and some blush. I went, I am too. They'd be touching my face because it was like I was this hick from the mountains.
and like, were your clothes in style, like when you
They
got to New
were.
York?
I thought they were, but I had things like I can remember one of the times I was at a bar. I had on a little what was called just a shift, like Jackie Kennedy shifts were real
Mm-hmm.
popular, sleeveless and just sort of A-shaped dress. And then I would have a little duster that went with it. Like the dress might be light blue, and then the duster would be light blue and white striped with a little white collar, little Peter Pan white collar, and matching and gloves and a hat and a matching purse and shoes.
That sounds adorable.
It was not high fashion in New York, but
Hmm.
it definitely got attention.
You stood out.
Yeah.
Did you do more modeling in New York, or where did
Um,
you head
I
after the plastic? You had plastic surgery for this?
No, no, they actually when I saw the plastic surgeon the next day, he said, "No, the guy did such a good job on it. I couldn't have done better,
The
and you're
guy at
better off."
the other
At
guy.
Payne Whitney,
Okay.
just the night the on-call night surgeon
Okay.
who had done it. And he said, but I'll give you a plastic surgeon's number. And they both said, that the good thing is it's like right here. They
Uh-huh.
said, as you get older, it's going to be right in your smile lines. And so it's not going to show.
Okay. Character.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't have an agent then. In those days, I had signed, you had to have an answering service because there was not call any of the fancy things on the phone. A phone you could just call out or receive a call, period. That was
Mm-hmm.
it. And so for an actress, we all had day jobs and lives. And so you had to have someone answer your phone. So you switch it over. And I was with a company called Seven Lively Arts. That was these two delightful gay men and their French poodles. And they got me work all the time. And they got me into SAG and AFTRA. And then they would get me extra work. And they were the ones who had gotten me that print job that I couldn't do, obviously, with the black
Uh-huh.
eye. But they called me fairly frequently
Hmm.
for, I mean, it was $25 for the day to work on a film back then. But that was big money because I
So
paid
they
a
were
hundred.
agents.
They weren't really agents. No, they were just the people who took my calls, but
They
they had
answer
all
the
these
call.
connections. They had
Okay. Okay.
connections. They knew when there's something,
Amazing.
they had their ear to the ground or the wire
Yeah.
or whatever, and they knew because it was less formal then. You
Uh-huh.
didn't have to have an agent submit you. There were cattle calls continually. That's what would be in the voice. There'd be a cattle call. You'd go. It just means hundreds of people can show up for extras or bit parts.
Mm-hmm.
And so they kind of subverted that they knew, more what people were looking for. They had connections in the film industry. And so they got me on like John and Mary with Mia Farrow and Dustin Hoffman, and on there was one a love story that George, God, I'm blanking on his name, a famous actor named George.
George Papard.
No,
Uh, that's the only
uh,
one I know.
I'll think of it. Maybe I'm forgetting. Anyway, um, I was going to have Anna Maria. No, who was it? Well, I'll save that story for another time when I remember the details.
Yeah, it'll come back. It'll come back to you.
Yeah.
What other jobs did they get you?
Well, that was what I was trying to remember, these different films. And one of the films, there was a guy named Ed Folger who was I forget which one, but we often filmed in bars on the Upper West Side.
Mm-hmm.
Maxwell's Plum was a great place for filming. A lot of filming went on there for commercials and for film. And there was this guy, Ed Folger, who was the assistant director. So he was in charge of the extras too. And he and I hit it off and we started dating. And he later was my link to getting in the Milos Forman film because he was the AD on that film too.
Okay,
And I
tell us about that.
well, Ed, we were not dating anymore. It had been a few years, and he got in touch with me. He says, "Mary, there's this thing you should audition for." And he said, on this Wednesday in the Village Voice, there's going to be a little ad. It won't say who the director is or what the film is, but asking if you would be in a feature film and have an original song that you would contribute and get paid $50 for the works to be in the film and to give the rights to a song up.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it's not going to say all that, and it's not going to say that it's supposed to be funny. But so he gave me that edge that I knew that
Mm-hmm.
was what they wanted. And I hadn't really written anything that I thought I could use for a song. I used to write little songs about friends, but I thought no. But Tom Ian, I had gotten in his rep company with that audition. And so for 10 years, I did shows that he wrote for us. I mean, it was wonderful because he'd write parts just for me.
Mm-hmm.
And he, he had written a couple of songs, one that I knew of, that every other word was fuck. Am I
Mm-hmm.
allowed to say that on your radio show?
Not on the radio, it'll be bleeped out, but on
Okay.
YouTube, yes. Yeah.
Anyway, it was called Ode to a Screw. And it
Uh-huh.
basically said you could screw just about everybody. And there was no political correctness in it in those days. It was just
Mm-hmm.
like blasting everyone equally.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had seen this guy who had written the music for it. Tom wrote the words, and um, he sang it in a show, and it was just kind of creepy, a guy singing it. But I had this idea that if I sang it, I had a really like 4.5 octave range in those days, and had the real uh, super high soprano notes. And so I
Oh,
decided
wow.
if I sang it in really a lyrical voice, and just sort of like Shakespearean kind of singing, that it would be funny to have me like just sweet and everything in this sweet voice and singing all these absurd words. And so I was going to do that. Didn't play. I play keyboards, and I didn't play guitar at that time or any stringed instrument. So I asked the guy who'd written the music if he would accompany me for the audition, and he might be accompanying me in the show because I knew also that it was an audition scene in the show, in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so I I recorded that. Then he had a gig and he couldn't come to the audition. So we recorded it on a cassette with another song, a country song Tom had written. And I took it to Milos in this, I remember in this, uh, I don't remember if it was a hotel or a fancy apartment that someone had given him that the auditions were going on in. So I played both for him and he fell in love with Ode to a Screw
Awesome.
and just wanted to play it. There was a problem getting it in with the producers, but he prevailed. And it was mainly because some of the lyrics were not kind to a group that they were in. So there was not kind to anybody, but it was just fun. I mean, we didn't think about that. We were breaking all the rules then.
Right.
So so I got in, and then a week before the shoot date, Milos had Ed call me and say, "Oh, Milos has decided you should play a lute and accompany yourself for this audition." And I'm like,
Play a what?
"A lute, a
Is that an
lute."
instrument?
Yes,
Uh,
it's a stringed instrument that has like this rounded the body.
oh,
It's held
yes.
like a guitar, but played very differently, and it's all finger picking, and
Right.
it's very complicated. And I found one lute maker in New York, so I went to him. I said, "I don't even play guitar." And I go to this lute maker and I say, "Here's the deal. Is there a way I could fake it and you could play behind me or something?" And he said, "Honey, to learn to play one song on the lute will take you 12 years.
Oh my gosh.
It's not an easy instrument." And he said, "There's no way you can fake it. There's no way you can do this. And I'm not going to come and accompany you." But he said, "I have this horrible instrument that I loathe called the lute guitar that was just a guitar shaped like a lute, but you played it like a guitar.
Uh-huh.
And so he said, I have one,
Hmm.
and I'm happy to lend it to
Hmm.
you for a
Hmm.
week. So then, and then I had him show me how to play 3 or 4 chords that I needed for the song.
Uh-huh.
And I went home and practiced for a week. And I guess it was perfect for the scene because I was so terrified. I'd never played and sung in public for anyone before at the same time. And so it was perfect for an audition because there was enough tension. But when I saw the
Right.
movie, I was just like looking at all the tension in my face and going, oh my God. And then when I finally strummed the last strum, my face just totally relaxed.
But then it sounds like it was perfect for the movie. What did
Yeah.
you say the name of the movie?
The movie was called Taking Off.
Okay.
And originally it was called SPFC when we were making it, which stood for the Society for the Parents of Fugitive Children.
Okay.
But because the Vietnam War was on at the
Uh,
time, it sounded like a new weapon,
right.
SPFC. You know, they all had all these initials.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the screening, when I went to the screening, I walk out of the screening and I see Barbara Streisand standing by the elevators where I'm headed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm quick trying to think of something I could say to her that was, you know, what do you say to someone like that? And as I'm getting to her and like hesitating to just get my words right, she goes, "You have a beautiful voice. Wow." And I'm like,
Oh, oh my gosh.
oh wow,
Wow.
you know. And then she asked for a Kleenex. She needed to blow her nose, and I said, I don't have a tissue, but I learned from my mother to always have a handkerchief. And I had this lacy antique handkerchief that had been her bridesmaid handkerchief at her
Uh-huh.
wedding. And so I said, but you can use this. And she's like, oh, it's so pretty. I said, no, go ahead. It's fine. It's a hanky. And then she used it and was about to give it back to me. And then I had the feeling she thought better of it. I don't know this woman. Is she going to sell my snot? You know, I don't know. You know, because people are crazy.
That
And
thought ran through my head. Yeah.
yeah, and so to make I said, oh, just keep it. I mean, I should have said, take it home, wash it, and mail it to me. You know, but I said, just keep it. She's really.
Uh-huh.
I said, no, 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 you can have it. And so I don't know if it's in her collection of things anywhere.
Wow.
And
I
then
was gonna ask where you got your confidence to just go out and try to do all these things and things you didn't know how to do. And then like if you have Barbara Streisand complimenting your singing, I'm sure that helps. But
well,
really, how did you get like, this can
I
can do anything attitude?
I never got over stage fright.
Mm,
I never Tom Ian's rep company for 10 years with the same people. We were always stoned or tripping and cared for each other. We were a
hmm.
family and people would if you dropped a line someone would say something that made you look so funny and so good. And later when I was in Calcutta and then in Lemmings, it was not that kind of world, especially in Lemmings. I would be ready to throw up every night before going on stage because I didn't know who was going to try to trip me up or make me look bad because that was what the guys thought was really funny. This is
Oh,
Chevy Chase, which you can believe it about, Christopher
yeah.
Guest, and
Uh-huh.
John Belushi.
Uh-huh.
Three enormous egos who were out to make everybody else look bad and themselves look good.
Oh.
And that show was cutthroat that way, and you had to be on your toes all the time. And by the time I left, it was such a relief to just not go through that every night because I never knew where it was coming from or who would do something. But I also look back on the kind of actress I was then, and they were probably just get rid of her. I don't know. They thought of me as anything from a whore to Miss Goody Two Shoes. You know, that it's like they couldn't figure me out.
I mean, so I'm sure you have like so many stories about that time period too. Like, we discussed that I think you'll come back for a second show,
Yes.
a part two, where we'll cover that portion and
Okay.
up to now, or maybe we need a part three. I don't know. But you said you could do a series, and um, we're out of time now, unfortunately,
Oh,
already.
okay.
I know it goes by so fast, but you
It
have so
does.
many great stories and you gave a great preview to next time we can talk about Old Calcutta and the Lemmings. And up until now, you're acting now. And
Yeah.
you're actually represented by Radical Artists Agency. We interviewed Kathleen last week. And yeah, so can't wait to talk more. Um, do you have any words of wisdom to tide us over until you come back?
Well, I wish that someone had told me at the time, I wouldn't have believed it, that if you want to be an actress, I felt like I didn't need to learn anything else, that I could just be an actress, but have another job, have another career that you love, and that you can then say no to people because you're secure.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause I was like incredibly insecure, and I think a lot of actors are, and end up doing something things that are a little shady because they don't have the chutzpah to just know. But on the other hand, I always took jobs where I'd say, "No, I can do this," and then I'd
Yeah.
learn how to do it by the
Mhm.
time you had to.
Well, yeah, and I think that is like a really, im- important lesson also,
Yeah,
'cause
remind me of horseback riding in a movie, and I'll tell you a story.
okay, okay, we will. Um, Thank you so much for joining us. We'll definitely see you back even next week, possibly.
Okay,
Um,
great.
I'm Castle with Santa Fe International Film Festival. Our festival is on October 14th through 19th. The final deadline for submissions, if you have any Mary Jenifer, any films you want to submit, July 7th is the final submission date. Check out our Instagram, Santa Fe International Film Festival. And yeah, we'll see you, it seems like next week to hear the rest
Okay,
of the Mary Jenifer Mitchell story.
great. Well, have a good week.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.